Good. Okay, so I think everyone,
I know from my
if I can have your attention, I think everybody here, I think everyone here realizes that the pandemic, surprisingly to me, turned out to be a huge propellant of digital transformation of industries. An awful lot has happened since the last time we were gathered here in person in Davos. But what we want to do over the course of the next hour is focus on what's next. Where are the next big breakthroughs? What are the technologies that are going to transform industries? And we have an ideal panel to do it, cross-industry, so you'll get different perspectives on it. Cristiano Amon is the CEO of Qualcomm and can give us the sort of across-the-board view of where new technologies are being adopted. Paul Hudson is the CEO of Sanofi, so can talk to us about how it's influencing healthcare. Stephanie Lennertz is the president of Marriott and can talk about technology in the hospitality business. And then Christian Bruch is the CEO of Siemens Energy, and we will talk about what's happening there and also transition into how this transformation, the digital transformation, intersects with the sustainability transformation that's going on at the same time. But Cristiano, let me start with you. You have an interesting perspective on all of this. If you take a sort of a 3 to 5 year time frame, where do you see the big breakthroughs, the big changes that are going to affect industry?
No, very good. Maybe I'll just start by saying right now it's very clear, and I think it's very clear to all economies, developed or developing economies, that a lot of the growth is going to be digital. And it is going to be digital transformation of virtually every enterprise and industry. And also, even to achieve sustainability goals, you cannot go green if you're not going digital. Now, what is interesting is we also see an intersection point of a number of technology trends that are driving that transformation. So just sticking with the theme of frontier technologies, maybe I'm going to list a few. I think one is devices are becoming all smart, intelligent, and connected. And I think we're building, especially what's happening outside the data center, what's called the edge. You see now an incredible demand to make billions of devices, all connected to the cloud 100% of the time. I think if it's not connected, will be the exception. So connectivity of everything is a big trend. The other one is the application of artificial intelligence. I would argue that what we have seen today of artificial intelligence development in the data center, we're just scratching, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We're just scratching the surface, because as you bring artificial intelligence computational capabilities to all of those different devices, and they have real context and their sense in the world, that you're going to have a different scale, and we're going to see probably the largest growth of artificial intelligence happening at the edge. There are other trends. The merger of physical and digital spaces. That's a very big topic. It's a big word. You can see that coming, for example, in conversations such as the metaverse. You can see that coming within digital twins. But the reality is we can build digital twins of everything right now. And you can start to overlay the physical world with the digital world. And of course, it's easier to see when you look at technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, and even how this is going to evolve how we do simple things of communications. You know, it's if you look what happened, for example, communications, we used to make phone calls like this, then all of a sudden we're texting, now we're doing like this, and tomorrow it's going to be a hologram that you're going to see to your augmented reality glasses, like somebody's going to be like you and I here. So, and I think that continues. You see computational going to the edge. Edge computing is another trend, as you know, computation that we have now, a large capacity data center starts to build distributed. Other trends that are happening that driving the digital transformation is the enterprise transformation of the home. The workforce changed. The work's changed. You know, you have the hybrid work, I think, may be here to stay, when you can work from anywhere. That's changing how you think about the configuration of the enterprise. The home is becoming an enterprise, and that's driving a lot of different technologies as well. So it's a big array.
Busy time.
It's busy time.
All of this in the next 3 to 5 years.
And I would just finish by saying, it is a great time to be in the technology industry right now.
Yeah. Well, good. So, Paul, healthcare. I mean, that's an area where people are dying for improvement. Well, it wasn't meant to be a pun. I'm sorry. They want to see improvement, and we did through the pandemic, of course, extraordinary examples of innovation in science. But how do you see digital technologies changing healthcare in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, let's not put digital and technology together just yet. If you think about what happened in our industry in the pandemic, I've never been more proud to be in healthcare, particularly to see what was done with mRNA. mRNA was unproven, had never had a success before the pandemic. So you have to say to yourself, the platform technology that allowed people to engineer a response to a challenge, to mount a response to the threat of a virus by using a lipid nanoparticle, which you may not understand, but it's incredible what happened to make a technological leap from anything that had happened before. And it was done in such a speed and such collaboration with regulators that showed us, is this just the beginning? Where does this go next? Does this go to cancer? Does this go to untreatable cancers? Can we use the vector in an mRNA to go after a liquid or a solid tumor that's never been conquered before? Can we take cell editing and put it in mRNA and edit your gene in your body just from an injection? That's not that far away. It's turning science fiction into science fact. That's where we're actually heading. So platform tech is really on the move for us. Nanobodies crossing the blood-brain barrier, taking on diseases where you thought the penetration of tissues was impossible. Looking at how you construct cell and gene together. We're right at the forefront. And while data and digital play a huge big part in that, the scientific breakthroughs that enable untreatable diseases, undruggable diseases, to have solutions for them. That's what we're after. For data and digital, of course, everything is powered by it, and I think we all understand that. For us, we're not left behind either. We are looking at bringing together all of the data that's ever been done on clinical trials in the entire company, if not the industry, to look for clues where we look back. Remember, most clinical studies, there's a group that don't get the drug and a group that do get the drug. We've never really been able to look carefully at those that don't, the placebo, the control arm. What happened next? Where are they? What are the themes? What did we miss? What can we compute we couldn't do before? We're able to go back and look at the richness of what already exists and try and find out where we may go. That helps us find new drug targets, new clinical pathways, just inspires us to go after, remember, only 10% of diseases are treatable. Remember that. So we can get to set a whole new standard for what is going to happen next. So we do that. So we collaborate with big companies externally, because building on the comments that are already made, I think one of the big leaps that everybody has to make is to say, it was for a while about data. Then it became about how do I have my data? And now it's distributed data. And the opportunity in distributed data without compromising confidentiality, but training algorithms to find new medicines is something that none of us could have comprehended even a year ago.
And so in addition to finding new medicines, which is huge, obviously, and powerful, you also have the whole connected health phenomenon. I mean, I'm sitting here wearing my Oura ring, which, do you have one on, Stephanie? Who else has an Oura ring?
Sorry, I don't. I need one.
And that's just the beginning, to Cristiano's point, what is this? So this is a fitness device. It measures my sleep, gives me metrics in the morning about how well I slept, whether it chastises me if I have too much to drink the night before, all of those things. But that's just
but just to build on that, that's great as an individual monitoring. Now imagine back to the IoT comment and the metaverse. Now how could you be supported in Web3 to actually make adjustments real time, and even with augmented reality education, so that you could see the improvements you could make? Maybe you could even sleep better, Alan, even you.
And putting me, I really am getting a little uncomfortable with the focus on me. But problems like diabetes, for instance, and the potential for these kinds of connections to revolutionize the treatment of those diseases is.
Well, I think that's it. But there's another important point, and as we go on this journey, the desire to get to people before they develop diseases, in this case, pre-diabetics, to be able to alter the course of disease using data to provide the necessary advice and coaching is very important, not least because you'll affect their long-term outcome. They won't get chronic kidney disease. They'll have, hopefully, a normal life and be able to do normal things. And here's the rub. The emissions that are saved because they didn't have to go to a hospital over 500 times in their disease journey.
Aha.
People are missing the fact that the convergence of, it's not just poor air quality that drives diseases, it's what you're creating in terms of emissions, because healthcare is still in big old buildings in the center of cities, and it needs to be virtual and distributed like everything else.
And we will come back to the environmental point. This is such a rich topic. There's so much here that I wonder, could we extend this to a couple of hours? Would you mind? Are we allowed to do that? Stephanie, hospitality, changing very rapidly. Can you talk about what's ahead for the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, for sure. So we are doing a ton of things at my company, the largest hotel company in the world, but across travel and tourism with technology, digital, data, analytics. And I will say, while we are not saving lives, as you are, I do believe travel is something that makes the world a much better place and brings us together as communities. So passionate about the health of our sector overall, continuing to grow. But in terms of data, digital, technology, we're doing a ton of things to use data to personalize the guest experience, whether it's on our website, our app, or in our 8,000 hotels and 30 brands in 139 different countries. But let me mention just 2 examples to make it real. We had an acceleration of rolling out digital technology in our hotels during the pandemic because people didn't want to go to the front desk and see another human being when they checked in. And the hotel industry has always been quite behind the airline industry in terms of using your phone to check in, to check out, to use your phone as a key. So we supercharged, or to use your phone to order room service, extra towels, et cetera. So we supercharged the investment in the rollout in digital technology in our app because of COVID. It really kind of gave us that push. Something that's more cutting edge and new, and you're seeing a lot of retailers do this, and hotels are essentially retail, is we just announced a very big partnership with Yahoo as a tech partner to launch a media business at Marriott International. I think everyone probably knows that Amazon, I think their most profitable revenue now comes from ads. So think about my company and the amount of data, first-party data we have on people. People stay with us for days and weeks on end, much longer than the average retailer. We have 165 million Marriott Bonvoy members who give us a lot of data on their preferences. So we're harnessing that data to launch an ad network where we will use our website, our ad. Think of the millions of televisions we have in hotel rooms around the world, the sides of buildings, to launch an ad business, essentially, where advertisers can match their data anonymously with our data and start serving up a fabulous luxury good to somebody we know has a propensity to stay at Ritz-Carlton's and St. Regis hotels, as just one example. So I think you're seeing the likes of Walmart, Target, many retailers around the world launch their own advertising businesses and harnessing the power of their first-party data. And my company just launched that too, which was a little bit different for a travel.
That's just great for those of us in the media business. You're all going to become.
Well, it's a trend, though, right?
It is a trend.
And it's because the world's going cookieless, right? So this is the whole trend with first-party data. But it's one of the more cutting-edge.
And anybody who is engaging customers the way you are has a huge opportunity there.
We do, and we have to be careful not to make our website or our hotels look like the race cars with got to be careful with how you do this, right? With the advertising, but it's really it
has to be a good experience.
Has to be a good experience, but it's a very big business opportunity, and it's again something that's more new and cutting edge that we just announced.
Yeah, Christian, energy, big area.
Big area, and at the moment, obviously, if I listen, and I mean, this will all need electricity, so that is good, right? But I think I just would like to highlight a couple of points which I see as a common trends happening in energy industry going forward over the next 1 or 2 decades. And there's a couple of things where I think which we would need from a digital perspective really to make this happen. First of all, electricity gonna grow massively. At the moment, the most conservative projections are that by 2030, we will have roughly 50% more electricity generation. More realistic is probably double that, right? And if we go all down the net zero path, it would be even much more, right? If we then move to renewables, we always have to be aware, if you replace 1 megawatt of coal-fired power plant by solar, you need 4 times the capacity because you have less runtime in a year. So you're going to flip the complete electrical system around. What does it lead to? It does lead to that you will need unprecedented level of investment into electrical infrastructure, interconnected grids. And that is something which I think in a lot of parts of the world, people are not aware about yet. Because this will create a physical interconnected electrical system, which at the end will be steered by a lot of data, where we have no means today on how this data should look like, how do you ensure interoperability, what about cybersecurity, right? Because all of a sudden you're going to be in the center of the critical infrastructure. And the amount of investment which is required there to happen, high voltage connections, really connecting the UK and Central Europe, Africa and Southern Europe, will be massive. And this will require a lot of, first of all, digital management solutions, but also a framework on how we handle data in the system, which we do not have today. And obviously the decision on what we're going to do in terms of cybersecurity, where do we feel comfortable with and where do we not feel so comfortable with of opening up this infrastructure. But I think by and large in energy, the amount of change which we'll see over the next 1 or 2 decades is completely underestimated. And we talk only about generation. We always talk about we built a wind farm, we built a solar one. Nobody talks about all the network behind. And this will absorb more money and more efforts than we believe. There's one other super important trend in energy, which we always have to see, which is very closely linked to digital and data. We do not solve the problem of sustainability if we don't shrink the problem. So we need energy efficiency, energy efficiency, energy efficiency. And this comes with data, data management, AI, whatever. But this obviously at the same time will require an understanding on how do we link the different systems for the first time and make it more interconnected. And that is something which we are obviously also interested in close connection with the digital industry. How can we really get this understanding that we talk about in hardware interconnected system and manage data in a cyber secure way?
You know, what's so interesting to me about Davos this year is that business is going through, as is evident by the conversation we just had, business is going through kind of 3 revolutions at the same time, and they're all interconnected. You've been focusing primarily on the technology revolution, which is going to transform every industry, already has and will continue to. On top of that, there's this kind of purpose revolution. The goals of business are changing. It's about something more than making profits for shareholders, and sustainability has become a big part of that. ESG across the board has moved up in the corporate hierarchy. And then the pandemic has forced this reinvention of work on us, which is empowered by technology. So you have all these, every conversation I've been in since I got here has focused on one of those 3 revolutions, but they're all very closely connected, aren't they, Christiana?
Absolutely. And you know, one thing that is fascinating, it comes down to some of those trends discussion we have before, and it's about harness the power of data, be able to process data, be able to achieve insights, and then you know you have to have all of those things happening across every industry, which brings an important conversation. I want to pick back what my friend from Siemens said about everything's going to need electricity. You know, if you go back to, you know, I'm sure I wasn't there to see it, but I'm sure when you go back to the beginning of electricity, there probably a discussion of use cases. What is this used for? Maybe a light, you know, a lamp, a light bulb, or you can drive an electrical motor. We don't talk about use cases anymore. We just assume it's there. And as he said, it's going to consume a lot of electricity. That what is going to have to be the mindset about connecting to the cloud. We just needed to assume it's connected. Why is this not connected? That is the exception. And I think one of the things that, to make all of this happen, because all connected, is the ability to have critical infrastructure, like, it was the role of electricity, for example, the connectivity of everything. And that, leads to conversations such as deployment technologies such as 5G and fiber, and how do you actually ensure that you have the ability to connect everything on the distributed network so you actually can harness the power of data, achieve insights, and execute on that vision across many industries.
Yeah, interesting. When Christian talks about connecting the grid, I think of the power lines in my neighborhood that come down when the big storm comes through. But we're talking about technologies that will take us well beyond that, aren't we?
But if I may jump in there, because that is the interesting element, because honestly, I think technology we have available, data, I think we have an understanding, but we have an infrastructure and boundary conditions and mechanisms in place where the authorities and the companies behind it are not used to that speed of change. So the amount of boundary conditions we have to change to deploy all this great technology which is available is massive. And I think going forward, the big thing which has to change in energy industry, and in this regard, I appreciate also this cross-industry collaboration, is really change of perspective and willingness to change.
Yeah.
It's not a problem of technology.
I'm really glad you said that. My next question was going to be, what are the barriers to this very exciting vision of the future that the four of you are presenting? And you just cited a big one, which is mindset.
Yeah.
But what?
Yeah, well, no, let me add to that, that I think everything is converging, like you said, tech and purpose. I feel it very strongly while we're here. But also the nature of work has changed completely. So it used to be, can you operate companies via Zoom from home? But now the question is, can you collaborate? Can you innovate? Can you develop people? Can you create a purpose-driven, workplace? It used to be the millennials asking, is this a purpose-driven company? Now it's the Zs. And then after people spent more time at home over the last 2 years, many of the X's and Y's started saying that maybe my exit number I need to retire at a certain point has got lower and come forward because my own time at home became more valuable to me. And I'm starting to question my own purpose. Would I rather finish earlier? Would I rather join the gig economy and do things differently and step out in my early 50s, for example? I think everything has changed. And the connection to the purpose and the behaviors around that are what underpins the whole thing. I think the tech is there. I think the energy may be a struggle. But I think ultimately how we adapt and behave. A good example would be, I've heard people say, is your company Mondays and Fridays from home? That's the sort of thing people say. Are you 100% home? And we say, well, actually, we're trying to get to a place where, you come to a place of collaboration because of the work and the workflow. So what things do you need to do together? How do you do things together? When should you be face-to-face together? Not is it only on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. It's what is the things? Is it a staff meeting? Is it an innovation meeting? When should you just be present and there will be no hybrid, no tech?
Yeah.
Because we need to learn different ways of doing things, not get fixated on, can I start my weekend on a Thursday and move more to, why do I go to that place? Is it worth it from an environmental impact, to feel closer to the purpose and to feel developed? And I think talent is asking that question now. So it doesn't want us to make assumptions about it.
Stephanie, go ahead. You were going to.
No, I was just going to connect a couple of things that were said by the panelists to the hotel business. One of the things we're very focused on is we've committed to have net zero carbon emissions by 2050 or sooner. Think about hotels. They're like hospitals. They are giant sources of energy use, right? And so when we think about how we can use technology to meet those goals, we think about smart building automation, right? And we think, first of all, we're very dependent on the grid, right? Like we can only make our hotels truly sustainable if we have the ability to get, the right type of renewable energy sources, et cetera. But we're doing a lot of cool things with technology to hit those goals, just to link it back to this technology point. So rolling out smart building automation so it can tell when you walk into your room if someone's in there, and it can reduce the temperature right away to save energy. Food waste is 50% of the garbage in a hotel. Food waste is a major contributor to greenhouse gases. We have so much food waste. What can we do? So we're using a lot of digital tools and data to track what's being wasted, how much of it, so we can do things like completely change what we put on buffets. People still like buffets, believe it or not, in hotels. And so when we roll these tools out to a hotel, their food waste goes down by 50%. So things like that. And the last thing, just to connect the dots, as all of your respective companies are looking to reduce your scope 3 emissions, and we're in your supply chain, what can we do to make sure that Siemens is one of our biggest customers globally? Your folks are asking us, what's the carbon footprint when we send people to your hotels when you have a meeting? So we have to be able to have the data and the tools and technology to give the reporting back to our top customers so that you can meet your goals. So I think there's so much interconnectivity on how all of these pieces fit together.
Yep. Did you want to add something to that, or?
No, I was just going to basically say, and I don't know if that's going to be another topic that interesting to discuss, but when you maybe adding to what my friend here said about talent, one of the other obstacles, I think, to this digital transformation and the benefit of technology everywhere is actually access to talent.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of new jobs. They're going to be created by technology, but you need, a skilled labor force. I was in a different conversation the other day, and I thought it was very insightful. If you look at in the Industrial Revolution and how there was an influence, how we think about education and classrooms, it was about training people to work in a factory. And right now, I think what we're going to see, if you just forecast the next few years, the next 3 to 5 years, is the demand for example, a software engineer in many of those enterprises. It's going to be very high, and we need to make sure we have access to,
Yeah, let's stick with that, because we just, at Fortune, we just did the Fortune 500 list came out earlier this week, and we did a survey of Fortune 500 CEOs, and we asked them, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? And it wasn't recession, it wasn't inflation, it wasn't geopolitics, it wasn't cybersecurity. Number one was talent. Talent. How do I get the people I need? Yeah. And I've talked to you all and enough people about this that nobody thinks this is just a passing macroeconomic moment, that there's something fundamentally different going on here about the ability to get the right talent in place to do what you're trying to do.
I think there's also a complete mindset change required. I met somebody who just joined our company a few weeks ago, and she's in her early 30s. She's come from a venture capital background. She's joined us. She's super talented. We're very lucky to have her. And I said, why did you join us? And she said, well, I'm collecting experiences, and your time in a big healthcare company is one of the necessary experiences for me to be much more aware of what I may start my own company after I've been here.
Wow.
She'd been in the company a few days. And I said,
wow.
Now, traditional me, when I started my career, people would tell me, find a great company, try and see it through.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, maybe you'll go end to end. And I think we really have to take the blinkers off and say, talent is looking at experiences and chapters, right? Experiences and chapters, and they want to come. But the deal is different. So the trade-off used to be, if you come here and you work hard and you bring your experience, we may promote you to deputy senior vice president in 5 years. It's gone. There's still a group, of course, but for the real amazing talent, they're saying, I'll bring from day one my experiences, and I'll help you be a better company, but I will leave at some point. And you should not be concerned by that. I will leave it better than I found it, but I also will leave better than I arrived.
That's right. And you better make me better than I was.
You better make me better, and I'll make you better. But that's never really been. Industries have collected talent. We're going to universities. We're doing this.
Yeah.
And then we bring them in, and then we hothouse them, and then we accelerate them. And
I see Stephanie and Christian. I see both kind of nodding at this.
We have to accept that talent will only spend shorter and shorter amounts of time in organizations.
Yeah, when we talk about talent, one thing I think it's important to think about is my industry is a good example. Not everybody goes to a 4-year college and wants to work in tech or, healthcare things. My workforce, 750,000 employees pre-COVID, 95% work at a hotel, housekeepers, dishwashers, bellmen, doormen. These are people who, skews very female, skews very minority, skews very youth. They were devastated by the pandemic. And so I think there's big swaths of the economy, and big parts of the workforce that were just devastated by COVID, and we're trying to get people back into those jobs. And there's great dignity in service work. 50% of the general managers in our hotels started out as an hourly worker. We're very focused on hiring as many refugees as we can. So I just want to make sure when we're talking about talent, that there's big parts of the economy that we have to make sure we think about them. We need to start thinking about, when I talk about us rolling out all this digital technology, what does that mean then to front desk jobs? And how do we think about reskilling workers, hourly workers? So I just think that that's a big, important part of the discussion, is these parts of the economy that are more hourly jobs, and how can we make sure that we lift up those jobs as well?
Well, thanks, Stephanie, because this was exactly my point, right? Because, I agree with the talent view, right? It's, we'll get more and more challenge. I also agree with the completely, compared to our generation, completely different approach to what you do in a company. But I think we have to be very careful as companies and as a society, not continuously creating winners and losers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is something which is down to the reskilling. And not everybody can be a software engineer, and not everybody needs to be a software engineer. But this is something which will be the key element for I believe, my company, to make sure, how do I reskill all the workers who have welded a turbine or refurbished a coal-fired power plant into something where, as I say, that makes sense, creates value, because I'm very concerned that we continuously forget this reskilling or really repurposing.
And so how are you doing that, Christian?
Well, that's a work in progress, and by no means I would say we have let's say, something where I would say we know how to do it. But at least we have introduced a couple of years ago what we call strategic workforce planning, and really trying to define this career paths on how to get somebody from place A into place B, right, in terms over the years to deploy that. Why is that so? Obviously I have a quarter of my workforce, around 25,000 people, sitting in Germany. You don't hire and fire if you have your workforce in Germany. It doesn't work, right? So the only chance what you're having is really reskilling. But it's a multi-year exercise. The first thing what needs to happen is that people need to get ready that you have not learned a job, and then you go to a company, and then you make your career. The thing about you have to relearn, you have to reposition, don't define yourself by a box you're in today, define yourself by the task you can do. And this is more a cultural change what we're trying to introduce, but we are at the beginning. And I'm happy for finding allies, really, on how we jointly as an industry can learn, because that will be the key task for our societies.
Maybe just to connect those points together as well. I came through an airport just recently. There were huge lines at security. And I asked why there were so lines. So we don't have the staff.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people just decided they didn't want to take the abuse at airport security, having had 2 years off, and they didn't want to do it anymore. The rest of the place, the duty free, everything else, overstaffed. And I wonder, I don't know, I don't work in your industry, but I wonder when we go from reskilling to additional skilling, and we ask people to be more flexible about the type of work they do, not you were in duty free and now you're working in security, but a reality check that people are going to have to be more generalist to manage the surge demand that happens, because it's not, it's at all ends, and not, I agree with you, we shouldn't create winners and losers, but we should help people always be doing something meaningful or contributing. And that may mean one day you're doing this and one day you're doing that. Maybe in your industry that happens already. We've not been on that journey yet in healthcare, but maybe that's where we head at some of the other roles in the organization.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. We are doing that. We're rethinking the jobs in hotels to be more multifaceted and to do more things than just work at the front desk, right? Or just be a department supervisor. How can you make jobs more interesting and flexible and to attract the talent, right? So I think that if you're in the service industry, whatever industry you may be in, that's a really important point. it's one of those things that, says easy, does hard, because you have to really put the energy behind training people and the commitment to it. But I think it's an excellent point, and we are doing that in my industry.
So I want to talk about some of these leading edge technologies and where you're seeing the potential for using them in your industry. And let me start with blockchain, just because it's all over the place here in Davos. There's a church up there that's been converted to a gateway to some crypto metaverse or something. But blockchain, which of you thinks that the blockchain will have significant applications in your business?
Well, from a population health perspective, there is no future without blockchain. There's no future without non-fungible tokens and the ability to follow patients through.
You can take your data with you wherever.
Yeah, because remember, if you're running a health system, there's one piece of data when you go to see a doctor. There's another piece when you go to the hospital. There's another piece when you get a prescription. There's another piece when you have an intervention or an MRI. And for governments, it's very difficult, right? Not only to staff it, but to understand where they're adding the most value and where the waste is, because the waste is significant, right? Really significant. And I think we have an opportunity with NFTs to, and it's a recent epiphany for me, but to completely digitize healthcare systems to allow for better population health management without ever revealing the identity of the person that was, driving the event or interaction.
The flip side of that is that the individual has better control over their own data as well, right?
Well, with NFTs, they decide what they want to share.
Yeah.
So that's already a step
Yeah.
forward. Secondly, you'd have to be particularly determined to try and find out who it was, and the data for an individual is actually worthless. The aggregated data and how populations evolve and how healthcare is delivered is much more interesting.
Yeah.
So there's less fear and paranoia. By the way, imagine, if you're in France, for example, you have a perfect data set, and it's all NFTs and completely anonymized, and an algorithm is working in a distributed manner to decide what the next best thing that should happen to you for your health intervention, particularly you, Alan, with your ring. It may be that they're looking at all of the data and deciding that actually we're going to recommend something to you. We don't know who you are. But we're going to recommend something to you. We'll never know. And you can decide whether you take it. But your life expectancy may increase without anybody knowing anybody.
That's huge. How about hospitality, Stephanie? Blockchain going to have applications?
I'm sure it will. When I think about blockchain, I think, the way it could impact the supply chain of, we think about how we get all the goods and materials to build our hotels, right? We work with third-party real estate partners to build hotels around the world and other things in our supply chain, food, et cetera. I was thinking about it more, to tell you the truth, when you asked the question in the context of wearing another hat I'm on the board of Home Depot, which is the largest home improvement company in North America. And I think we talk more about supply chain there. Blockchain there and how it will impact their supply chain and tracking their goods all the way from, where it starts all the way to the dock of Home Depot. So I think we'll have implications a lot in the supply chain space.
Christian, you there yet?
Yeah, I don't know, right? I'm trying to get my arms around, and I have to say maybe I'm too simple of a person to really grab it, right? But we're piloting blockchain in certain areas, like certificates, like cyber, like also some of the interconnected stuff. But I'm trying to figure out what is the value I can really create with that in my industry, and what is an alternative technology I, at the same time, can also use. And some things I see sound for me a little bit like fusion technology, right? You talk about it's a great idea, it works out, and then you're never there, right? So I have not cracked yet for my industry really the logic of the commercial use case why this is a demanding technology which will solve this exact problem. Because so far the problems I look at, there are some other technologies which come easier to solve the problem.
Yeah,
That's good.
In a different way.
Just one comment in terms of the enablement of the technology. So there's so many applications for NFTs, as my colleague here said, which one of the things we had done with our latest chipset that goes into smartphones is to enable you to mint your own NFT in your smartphone. Because I think at the end of the day, we do everything with our smartphones. Why not also be able to mint?
And why do I want to do that?
Well, because
I'm not saying I won't, but I just want to.
you can create a lot of digital content
Yeah.
You know, whether
And own it.
Yeah, own it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that my business has suffered from the last 2 decades, the inability to claim provenance and track digital ownership of
And we
things.
talk about it, Jenny, we're talking about it like it's a choice. 80% of high schoolers have a crypto wallet. Right?
Interesting.
So it's already gone, right? I mean, we can't actually just sit here and think,
But
we're from a different generation.
Another question we ask the Fortune 500 CEOs is, are you accepting crypto as payment, or do you hold it on your balance sheet, and do you plan to in the next 2 years? What would you guess the yes/no breakdown on that is? It was 90% no.
90% no.
No.
Not surprising.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think genuinely we particularly middle-aged white guys like myself have to really be aware.
Even
that the
old white guys like me.
The world has moved on, and whether we like it or not, kids don't carry cash.
All right, here's another one. Quantum computing. Christian, quantum computing, do you think that's going to be of a
Yeah,
value?
absolutely, yes. I think obviously there are certain problems which require a different approach to computing power. Obviously, I mean, I look at, let's say, simple application from our side, approaches on catalyst, or if you come to chemical industry. And I mean, you will solve certain problems only on the simulation side if you really can apply quantum computing. So that I would say absolutely yes. It's not relevant for us today from a kind of application perspective, but will it be in terms of development of new routes, new catalysts, new ways of doing things in the process industry? Absolutely yes.
Yeah. Stephanie?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think we think a lot about quantum computing in the hotel business these days. We do think a lot about the metaverse, though.
Well, tell us. Go
I
ahead.
think
Let's
the
do
metaverse might
then.
be another trend you mentioned that might be a little more relevant for my space. I like to think about it this way. Think big, start small, scale fast, right? Because it's still a world that's very hard to understand. So we're talking about things like opening hotels in the metaverse. We did that, whatever the version was of this technology many years ago, we tried opening
Second Life.
Second Life, that was it, right? I was going to call it Second City, but that's I think a comedy.
But why?
Well, because I think people do want to live in both the physical and the virtual world. And I think my business is a perfect example. I mean, imagine if we are trying to sell a big meeting to one of you in the room, and we could have you come to our virtual hotel, right, and tour the hotel and really experience the hotel virtually in a really robust, deep, meaningful way as a way to sell the meeting, and then you physically go bring your attendees to the meeting. So there's so many use cases, I think, of combining physical and digital, and my space, my industry would be a good example.
Paul, quantum?
Yeah, look,
metaverse?
Well, let's go for a quantum leap, first of all, because back to the metaverse, the reality is, as a father of a 17-year-old high school boy, that lost most of his childhood on Minecraft, right? And I asked myself as we go into the metaverse, what has quantifiably changed? And it's the fact that they can now own their own real estate. What they were building in Minecraft, they can now own.
Yeah.
They can now create an NFT.
Yeah,
They can
back to
own it as an image.
blockchain.
They can own real estate. And so it makes their time gaming, which I was always of the, that's a waste of your time. It now puts a value on it. And so the metaverse, this I have my real self and my virtual self, and I can spend money and have a hoodie that is hard to get, in real life, but I can wear it in the metaverse where I meet my friends.
Well, and I suspect it will transform my industry as well. That if you can transact for digital information in the metaverse, read it in the metaverse, watch it in the metaverse, experience it. What are we missing here? I'm going to open it up to questions, but before I do, I just want to say, what other? You're a technologist. You have your eyes firmly on the future. What big breakthroughs are we missing here that are going to change?
Look, there's a lot of things, as we said, about in the horizon, and I do think that there is now this broader understanding of the role of digital, and the technology is going to get us there. I think the key thing is, how do you implement all those things at scale? But in terms of looking a little bit of the potential of technology, I'm just going to piggyback on this metaverse conversation because, we've been investing early in fundamental research to enable a fully immersive experience with virtual reality, augmented reality. But is this not for you as a person to experience, to get yourself inserted in Minecraft world that you build, or have a social experience in virtual reality? This is also going to be true for machines. You can start to think, and then you have a lot of enterprise applications as well that is going to revolutionize training, is going to revolutionize how, for example, a car can understand, its digital twin, how you drive the car, and the car maker of the car overlaying both information. When you take it to the car dealership, you'll be able to superimpose images into what you see. The application is going to be many for healthcare. So, and this is going to get significant scale. We have a little bit of a bold view in Qualcomm. We think that the augmented reality glasses have the potential to be the next computing platform. We talk about computing platforms. You have PC was first large-scale computing platform, then evolved to the phone, and maybe it's going to evolve to glasses. And it's no longer a technology challenge for you to think of a situation that you could be wearing glasses, and maybe I never see you, Alan, and automatically recognize your face, go to the cloud, search, and I said, here's Alan and all his different social platforms. I had interaction with him. You look at things, you get superimposed information about that. I think that's no longer a technology challenge.
Do you think that will start in business?
I think that will start in business.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Most of the big technology breakthroughs of the last 20 years started with the consumer, but we're now at a point where some of these things
The enterprise applications are incredible. It even goes back to how you train your skills.
Yep. I want to open it up because I'm sure you all have lots of questions, comments. Eamon, did you want to get in on this and then back there?
Thank you. I have a comment, but it was way back on the comments than the subject you're in
That's
now.
okay.
I'll track you back. Finding the right talent, I just wanted to say at that time, is also finding the right workplace. I think we're all it's not only the new millennia, Generation X like me and the baby boomers are looking for a different work environment, and they want a place where there's purpose and fun. So we have a hybrid model where people not only work from home, but also work back from their country. Because we lost a lot of talent during COVID, due not for career or better raise, but for going back home and being next to their loved ones because their priorities have changed. So I think it's very important that we need to make a change in the work environment. Today, I allow them. Of course, they have to meet when they have to meet, but when they don't, and there are no meetings where we have to be face to face.
Well, you can do your meetings in Marriott hotels.
Absolutely.
You don't.
And my question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
I was going to say, I do think we have to be careful because one of the things I think about with all this work from home, sometimes it becomes you're not working from home, you're living at work, right? Because there's not the line. So in terms of people being happy and fun, I think as we find the right balance.
The work-life balance.
Yeah, so they don't get burnt out working at home.
The potential to let people have great jobs from anywhere
it's tremendous.
is enormous.
Has to. And I have two small questions. I see that in Marriott, you're going into large advertising, and it's a huge platform opportunity. I could just learn it from you today. Did you think about going into merchandising?
Well, we actually do have we have a very big retail business. Okay. We actually have grown it quite significantly, if I'm understanding your question.
That is it.
Ritz-Carlton bedding, Westin Heavenly Bed, Candles, Edition Furniture. We actually have a very, very big robes, a very, very big and growing retail business because in our case, like all companies, we're trying to build out our ecosystem. We launched Ritz-Carlton Yachts this year. We launched a home rental business that's tiny compared to Airbnb, but at the high end. So we are thinking about building out an ecosystem all tied to travel to make our company deeper and richer and sticky.
Emotional. And by the way,
it's all about being sticky.
What you have done again, the scenario where my business failed. What you have done in taking your customer back from the search engines is phenomenal, and this is all part of that, right? They feel that I'm one of them. I start with you now. I go to the Bonvoy app.
Right, and you do that because when you come directly to us, we give you better pricing. We give you better selection of rooms. And there's things that you get
Yeah.
when you come direct to us.
Yeah.
Loyalty program.
Yeah.
My last question.
Oh,
Get our app. Get our
Last
app.
one. on mRNA.
A book on the app,
Should
though.
I allow this? Go ahead, quickly, very
has-
quickly.
Paul, on
That was a
mRNA.
small question, and any question that starts with mRNA is not a small question. Go ahead.
There are rumors that you'll have tomorrow vaccines that will keep us protected for 5 to 10 years. When can we expect that? And when we can expect mRNA to be affecting our oncology?
Well, two short answers then. You had vaccines that you had as children that protect you for the rest of your life. So I think you have to accept that we reach that when we've educated the body to mount a response, irrespective whether it's 20 or 30 years later. mRNA was designed, to move fast, to overcome a pandemic. The durability of mRNA for COVID and other platforms is really the next battleground. We don't know. We think there'll be 300 to 500 million cases, a year for 23, 24, maybe even 25. The question is how we deal with that. Just to be clear, I think the industry did an outstanding job to do what they did, and I've never been more proud of what the industry did. Now we'll crack what happens for an endemic, and then we'll see how long it lasts. Almost every pandemic that there's ever been has blown itself out in 3 to 5 years. So we have to learn a little bit from the past and be prepared for that.
Yep.
But I think we're on our way. Then it'll be cancer.
So question in the back, and then I'll come to you, Thomas.
Hello, and thank you very much. My name is Sharif, and I am a civil engineer. My question is with regards to, I was just actually fascinated with the fact that 90% of Fortune 500 companies refuse to have anything related to blockchain technology when it comes to the currencies listed on their balance sheets. So my question is, DAOs have very much helped democratize the fundraising process for a lot of businesses. In the construction industry, as we mobilize from an oil-driven economy to a more green and environmentally cautious economy, we struggle as we are very highly correlated with the oil industry. Do you believe that DAOs, as an application of the blockchain technology, can help democratize fundraising, and how can we leverage that at scale? Thank you very much.
Which of your companies is going to become a DAO first?
I have no proper answer on that. I cannot, right? I don't know. I don't know.
There is something going on that's very interesting, and this probably gets into a much more future state, which is that the whole kind of economic logic of the large corporations, which the four of you run, is torn apart by technology. The transaction costs that Ronald Coase wrote about 100 years ago aren't there anymore. You can do things in very different ways, and maybe it gets to the question about leadership. Like, how do you lead these big companies differently because of the technology revolution that we've been through and that is coming? I don't know if any of you want to take a stab at that one.
Well, I think you're right. I think we've got to recognize that the people that we're talking about in the 3, 5, 10-year horizon that will be customers or consumers, they're already more data literate and data native than we are. I think we just have to say to ourselves, do we have the right people sharing the right advice with, the senior leaders and executives? Because we're already out of touch. We're already out of touch. You know that. If 80% of high schoolers have a crypto wallet, we are long out of connection with what's really going on. And they're going to be staying in Marriott's in a few years, and they're going to be saying, what the hell is going on, because I'm not carrying a credit card or cash. And I just think one of our biggest challenges leading through this is not the technology or the disruption. Frankly, I'm excited about it. It's not that many years ago I would stand in the street and put my arm in the air and hope that I would get a taxi.
Yeah.
Right? That sounds now like the most prehistoric thing I could have ever done.
Still do it in New York.
That's what I was doing, and sometimes a little higher. But now you would not even think about it. You would not even think about it. And I think we're still putting our hand in the air as senior executives and thinking that we have a choice.
It requires a degree of humility that
That's
maybe.
what I was going to say. I think the key word there is leaders need to be humble enough to say we don't know everything, and we need to be open to new things. On the crypto point, we don't take cryptocurrency right now, but we are open to taking whatever kind of payment people want to give us, right? So we're going to have to think differently. All joking aside, we rolled out Alipay to all our hotels globally because that was the preferred way outbound Chinese wanted to pay. So we said we're going to make that happen. So we don't do it now. A few of our franchisees actually, Kessler Collection is a group of hotels in the United States. They're actually they're using it. So we actually have a few franchisees.
But I've
we need
noticed-
to be humble and open, and we need to. I wouldn't be surprised if someday we're going to take what people want to give us to pay.
As somebody who has done this for 40 years, literally, I mean, I can tell you there's a the type of leadership that the four of you are examples of is very different from even 20 years ago in terms of things like empathy, openness, vulnerability, recognizing that the ideas are not necessarily going to come from you. I just read the Jack Welch biography, and that's, that was only 20 years ago, and Fortune named him the manager of the century, and anybody who managed like that today would be in serious trouble.
But Alan, your point is so important. Your point is so important because if you ask my daughter, just going to do a master's. I asked her, what are you going to do next? She said, I might start my own company, right? So there's a very different level of thinking going on with young people today.
Yeah.
And when you ask them, do you not want to be in a boardroom? And I can get a boardroom. What I don't need to do, they think, is work the way through, you did the country,
Step
then
by
the
step,
region, then the da-da-da-da-da, because the skills they already have, none of us have experienced.
Yeah.
So we're so out of touch. They want to go straight to the boardroom because their working knowledge of blockchain is essential and very different. And I don't know about you, but I just worked my way up.
I'm going to take two. I'm going to take two questions here, so to make sure I get them both in, and then we'll go ahead.
All right, so I'm Thomas Laurent. So I'm the CEO of Axelos. It's a frontier technology company with a material impact on net zero 2050. Now, this is a question about shift in innovation curves and priorities. So the panel mentioned mRNA, that's a shift in innovation curve. And then now there are repeat shift in innovation curve. Those are the most valuable companies. So a more or less popular example would be Tesla. It's not just the electric car, it's also the autonomous driving. It's also the gigapress, which actually removes 30% of the robots in the factory. Those companies lead. So the question is, how do you put in your company a culture of repeat innovation curve shift?
Continuous innovation. Yeah. Don't answer that
And
yet.
then how do you prioritize with respect to society's goals? Net zero, refugee crisis, health crisis.
How do you prioritize?
Yes,
Okay.
with respect to society's goal.
Are you done? Because he got three, and if you want to compete, you're going to have right here.
Thanks. I'll make it related also. Safe from the Global Shaper from Montreal, talking about different generations. Yes, you're right. We're thinking about phases career-wise. What I want to add is that's a good thing because the world is not linear. The problems are so complex. But relating that to innovation, I think it was Gucci, don't quote me on this, who had a shadow board for youth and next-gen leaders. So how do you collaborate innovation-wise from an intergenerational allyship perspective to figure out the innovation piece? I'm 31, I work in AI, that's cool. I'm now figuring out, hang on, what is Web 3.0 again?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I already feel like I'm one of the old kids. So how do you do that?
Great. Okay, so we have 2 minutes left. Each of you have an opportunity to make a final comment here looking at, I think they're great questions to end with, continuous innovation, cross-generational innovation, and prioritization, because when so much is going on at the same time, how do you decide where to start and which to do? Go ahead.
Maybe I'll start. I'll make it quick. Actually, I think there's a similar answer to both questions. Look, our company's a little bit different. We have to, we don't have a choice. We have to try to think about what's going to happen 10 years in advance, because that's some of the development cycles of some fundamental technologies. And one thing that we learned as we went to multiple reinventions of our company, how we started and where we are right now, what has served us well is you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared to reinvent yourself. You have to be prepared to move very fast because, in the technology business and what we do, it's communications and high performance computing with sense. Technology business is the fact that you're successful today, it gives you absolutely no guarantee that you're even going to exist tomorrow. And I think without the ability to have, the being open to reinvent yourself, being open to change your own business if you have to, is the only way to stay relevant.
Yeah. Paul.
Two quick answers. And one, there are more innovative disruptions coming at us every day than we ever thought imaginable. For me, it's never been more exciting because if it leads to a disease, a cure for disease, it's incredible. What we have to do, though, is to get to the killer experiment faster and fail faster, because we just can't ride every horse. So we've got to get to a point where we know whether we should go or not, but we should be much more open to a much wider funnel to start, because otherwise we're going to miss something incredible. mRNA has been around 20 years, by the way, so it was looking for an application, which it got. And the last point, I have a 23-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 17-year-old, and I can't get through a single day without being told that I'm a dinosaur and that I should be open-minded to things that are very different, and it's helpful for me. But we can formalize that, all companies can, and I think we can do so much better to bring the younger voice and the more data-native voice into more executive-level conversation.
Stephanie.
So I don't want to repeat what these two fine gentlemen said, which I agree very much with, but let me add another element to it. I think a key to having more innovative companies is to have more diversity and inclusion. I think there's a real correlation to having more women, minorities, people from different countries, different ages. Like, I think you'll have a more innovative company that's closer to what customers want if you have more diversity and inclusion.
Christian.
Yeah, I think in terms of innovation, I think we today have a very ineffective and inefficient way to do innovation. So it's more about how do we do it. And this is for me collaboration, collaboration, collaboration. I agree with the diversity aspect, but it's really doing it differently, right? If we try to grab it all with the way we currently do today innovation, it will not work. And this is also then down to the prioritization. I think we will have to have to talk about my company, to a different way on decision-making processes and allocating accountabilities in a company. I mean, we are still obviously some hierarchy-driven type of companies which we're trying to break, but with the complexity of the issues we're having, we have to find a different way, because it will not get less complex. It will only get more complex going forward.
It's been a fabulous conversation, a really interesting peek into the future. I'm not going to take a poll because I know you all feel this is the best panel you have heard. There you go. Thank you. Thank you.